I mentioned earlier that it seems the PM is not on the same page as his Razor gang right now. While the Treasurer is looking for deep cuts and both his Finance Minister and Regional Development Minister are waving around a sharp razor, the PM's writing more cheques for mothers and parents. So what direction does Australia need to go in right now? And if we do become swamped by another recession or the impact of an American recession, is there any benefit in that nightmare? I couldn't think of a better person to put those questions to tonight than business guru and entrepreneur Mark Bouris, who's hitting the road early next year for a stage show called Reset and Rise. It kind of sums up exactly what Australia should be doing right now. Mark Bouris, great to see you again. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Chris, how you going, mate?
I'm very well. What do you make of the mixed messages we're getting from the Prime Minister and the Treasurer as to how to handle their first budget and, of course, our $1 trillion debt? What's your take?
Politics, politics, politics. That's my take. Re-elect me, re-elect me, re-elect me. Look, for me, you would expect that we should take heed of the policies of government in relation to the economics of the country. But at the same time, from my point of view, Chris, I think we should probably pay more attention to what the Reserve Bank of Australia is saying, and importantly, what's going on overseas and how that will affect us here in this country. So for me, mate, I think the US is going to do for us what we need to have done. They're going to put the US in recession, and that's going to have a flow-on effect throughout the world. And as a result of that, we should, with our higher interest rates now, be able to guide our way through this bit of drama we're having with inflation at the moment.
So you think we'll be able to get through this period without too many scabs?
I think so. I wouldn't have said this maybe a month ago, but given what the Reserve Bank, the language they used in the last meeting, and they're non-political, they should be, or let's call it apolitical, not sway by either side. Their language that they used in the last meeting, that was the meeting in October, and they only put it up by 25 basis points. They started to talk about the uncertainty created by global economic conditions. And that's the first time I've heard them really say that. And they're starting to talk about issues around the globe. In other words, they're referring to what's going on in the US. And by the way, China too. China's got, because of its lockdown policy, is having very low growth. Yep. They're places that create demand from Australians. In other words, we demand things from those places. And as a result of that, we would expect that those prices that are coming from those environments will be cheaper, therefore controlling inflation. Inflation is like a condition, okay? It's like COVID, okay? Someone's identified COVID. They said, this is what you got to do. Bang, 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 bang. Inflation is just another condition that exists, an economic condition that exists, that governments feel as though they need to change behaviour on. And the way they change behaviour is by pushing up interest rates. And right now, they're changing our behaviour. They've actually changed our behaviour in relation to the interest rate rises. There'll be 2 more at least this year. Yeah. But I reckon by February next year, mate, we should be in the clear.
OK, if it turns sour on us for other reasons that we don't know of right now, having a recession again in this country, is there any good in that at all?
Well, I can only go back in history. So the last time we had a very bad recession as a result of high inflation, so I'm not talking about just recessions generally, I'm talking about recessions brought upon us by virtue of having inflation sitting in front of us, was in the early 90s. And the then Treasurer was, I think he was either Treasurer or Prime Minister, was Paul Keating, who said, this is the recession we had to have. And you'll recall that, Chris. And the Reserve Bank governor at the time pushed interest rates up, the official rate up, to about 17.25%. That's the official rate, not the retail rate, the official rate. And that was to control inflation in the high fives, close to 6%, which is where we are right now. But the good thing that came out of that is we had a recession, but the good thing that came out of that is for the next 20 years, inflation sat between 2 and 3% after that. So we had to get a little bit of a kick up the butt. And this is what the US is doing now, as far as I can see. This is what Jerome Powell. They've got to do this. And where we might be lucky is that the US might do it for the rest of the world and help us out and take the US through this process, put them into recession. And recession means a little bit of reset when it comes to landlords feeling as though that they can jam tenants with really high rents, or when it comes to employees asking for much greater wage increases. Just change the environment such we start to think, well, maybe we appreciate what we've got at the moment. And as a result of that, we'll spend a little less or seek a little less in relation to what we're getting paid. Therefore, stop wage rise spiraling into inflation or rent-induced inflation, etc.
Okay, with energy prices sky high and inflation moving up 2 more times, you're suggesting, what should small business be doing now and what should they be focusing on?
Well, small business can't control inflation. They can't control the price of inputs. They can't control the demand for their goods if people start to get hit in the hip pocket by virtue of high cost of living and also higher interest rates when it comes to the mortgage bill. So have a look what you can control. The things you can control is your budget, your cash flow coming into your business and what you spend of that.
Yeah.
So it's about what you spend. So start to control what you spend. Start to get close to your customers. Start to realize that maybe I'm not going to get new customers for whatever reason. You know, there's just going to be a tough environment coming up, maybe a recession, but just certainly a tough environment coming up. Therefore, what am I going to do about my current customers? How do I retain my current customers and make sure that I get ready for when this cycle ends so that I can take advantage of what my competitors are not doing?
Perfect.
So you can't. So I'm not suggesting we can, I don't have a solution to kill it in relation to how business goes when there's a recession, but I do have a suggestion what to do as to make you put yourself in a position to take advantage of what your competitors do not do.
And is that the motivation for these stage shows you're having in 2023, Reset and Rise? Because that seems to be the pattern that you've just mapped out.
That is exactly the reason we're doing it. Apart from the fact I haven't had a chance to talk to audiences since 2019. We did a tour in 19. We spoke to 5,000 small business owners around Australia, or at least on the east coast of Australia. But this is a particularly important one. So we've gone through COVID and now we've got a potentially recession. We've certainly got higher interest rates and it's a confusing time. So how do I reset my program? And I've brought some really good guests in with me. It's not just Mark Bouris speaking. I've got 3 other fantastic guests who are going to talk to people about how do you tell stories, how to create brands, how do you get off your tush and get things done, like really get things done, make things happen with inspirational people. And then how do I take it to completion? How do I complete this whole business cycle? And I've got Toby Pierce going to talk about the guy who sold the Sweat app. So I think this is time to reset your mind, get your mind reset, and then start to get ready to rise when things turn around. Because, by the way, down periods don't last very long. We've probably got a good 12 months from when it started, May this year to May next year. So sometime after May next year, I think we're going to be ready to take off again.
It's all great common sense. Mark Bouris, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Good to see you, Chris.
Thanks. Good to see you too.